Hey guys, Auto Scotty coming at you here today. About 4 or 5 years ago, a friend of mine gifted me a bunch of guitar equipment, which was largely practice amps, little odds and ends here, but there was a guitar included in that lot of music gear that he gifted me, which I took a quick look at. Honestly, a cool looking electric guitar and a really crappy kind of old cardboard type style case, which if you're a guitar player, we've all seen those. I took one look at the guitar. I put it in my storage room. I never played it. I haven't looked at it since. Never even plugged it in, to be perfectly honest with you. That guitar is sitting over in this room here. This is it here. It's got this really crappy cardboard case that you see with cheap guitars. That's what's been sitting in my storage room. Yesterday there was someone on Facebook Marketplace that wanted to that I wanted to buy his guitar, and he didn't want to sell it, but he wanted to trade it. So I thought, do I have any guitars that I might want to trade? And so I thought of that one. So I actually went into my storage room and dug it out. Upon looking at it more closely, I became a little bit intrigued in this instrument, and the further I dug into it, the more the story started to unfold, and here we are in this YouTube video. I've now since decided to keep the guitar because it is sort of an interesting piece of music history, and today's video is going to be all about that era of guitar history called the lawsuit era of guitars. 50s and 60s, I would say, the big American guitar manufacturers, Gibson, Fender, Martin, were getting very popular. The music at the time was popularizing those brands, the likes of Jimi Hendrix. So there was a high demand for those American instruments, and they were pretty pricey for the average person at the time. And the prices never really went down. And as a matter of fact, they went up. And with the prices going up, the actual quality of the instruments went down. Eventually, consumers got tired of the supply and demand situation, and retailers got tired of it too. They couldn't keep American guitars in stock, so they were looking for an alternative, a budget option for their customers, essentially what they were looking for. Harry Rosenblum, I think is his name, started importing Japanese knockoff guitars. These were made by a factory in Japan. I can't recall the exact name, but I will give a link to the website which gives all this information if you're interested in reading further into it. But yes, there was this factory in Japan making these really nice replicas of these American guitars. Now, they weren't of any quality. This first music store owned by Harry Rosenblum started importing them and selling them. They were pretty cheap guitars, but they looked the part. They looked exactly like Fender and Gibson guitars, which is the key factor here. And you can kind of see where this is going. Companies like Gibson didn't really take to that too well. Let's have a quick look at the website where I've gotten this information and have a look at the 1972 catalog for these lawsuit era guitars. By the way, the company was making these guitars was named Ibenez, and now of course today we know Ibenez as a pretty good and large guitar manufacturer company. Back in the 70s they were pretty obscure and just making these knockoff guitars. So let's have a look at some of these knockoffs here. We'll just go on the World Wide Web. Sorry, I'll put a link in the description to this website. Actually, it's there's a string company, Stringjoy lawsuit era guitars. Okay, what was a lawsuit? What was the lawsuit era? And it just kind of goes through the history of the lawsuit era of guitars, but then we come to look at some of the actual models of guitars. This is the Ibenez catalog from 1972. So you can see we've got that very signature Gibson headstock there, and that is a Les Paul if I've ever seen one. That's exactly like a Les Paul. Of course, once you get closer up to it, and here we go are the Fender copies. Catalog, got a, looks like a Jaguar copy Jaguar? I'm not sure. I'm not big into those style of guitars. So there's a jazz bass copy, I believe. Here's some more Fender copies. We got a Telecaster and a Telecaster looking bass. Here's another website. What website is this? VintageJapanGuitars.com, 1972. This is the catalog here. And there are actually all kinds of Ibenez copies of these very popular guitars. There's a Les Paul bass, looks like. There's a Hofner bass, another Les Paul copy. All kinds of these copy, and they actually did these very kind of cool looking SG copies too. There's a SG bass, and all the most popular designs of guitars were copied by Ibenez, this obscure company Ibenez. And here is these acrylic guitars, and I've seen these around before. Never really knew what they were, but now I know what they are. So that's something that was pretty cool. I've seen these in music stores every now and then. And some more of these copies, and they look really cool. It was sort of very jarring to the major guitar manufacturers at the time that Ibenez was making these very realistic looking copies. There's an Explorer copy, and this is the 1972 Ibenez guitar catalog. And you can I'll put a link on this to this website here, Vintage Japan Guitars, Ibenez 1972 catalog. That is what the lawsuit era of guitars is. Now the interesting thing, you kind of see where this is going. I have one of those lawsuit guitars. As a matter of fact, the guitar that my friend gifted to me is one of those lawsuit guitars. Let's go have a look at it now. And one of the other things that is mentioned in that article that is a significant point is that the period at which these guitars were being imported and sold in America and presumably Canada too was very close after World War II. You know, it was the 60s and the 70s. World War II, you know, still pretty fresh in people's minds. From what I understand, Americans were still not super enthusiastic about Japanese products. How do you get Americans to buy a Japanese guitar? You trick them by renaming the company. Actually, this is an important part too. Say rename the company Ibenez USA. These guitars, they weren't branded Ibenez, even though they were made by Ibenez. Someone was clever and just took something that Americans love, Canadians love too, iconic symbol of American manufacturing, made in the good old USA, and we call this guitar the Camero. Can you believe that? There it is. That is an authentic Les Paul lawsuit era Ibenez guitar. I believe this is probably from the year 1972, the exact year that we were looking at on the website. Now, something else significant here is actually the case. Now that I know what this is, I'm fairly certain that this is the original case that this guitar was sold in. These were budget guitars. They were made cheaply. And if you look here, there's a sticker, and it's kind of a 70s style sticker. I probably think that this sticker is probably from the 70s. This is an actual cardboard guitar case with this faux snakeskin style thing. It's got some protective binding, but it is actually essentially cardboard, as you can see here, so you wouldn't want to get this thing wet. Super cheap guitar case. It's got all these clasps and hinges and stuff, but it is essentially cardboard. So very cheaply cheaply made, but still quite interesting. And here we have it, the Lawsuit era guitar. We're going to have a close inspection of this guitar, the Camero Les Paul. Now that I've got sort of interested in this thing, what we'll do is I'll try to close this with one hand. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a close look at this thing. And this is the exact guitar. It's got the witch hat knobs, the gold hardware, you know, the pearl tuning pegs, with the exception of this little badge here that's no doubt just stuck on. That is essentially the guitar that we're looking at in the 1972 Lawsuit era Ibenez catalog. Let's have a closer look here. And this is it right here. That is the exact guitar that we have right here. This is almost identical. It's got the Gibson open book style headstock, the bolt-on neck, gold hardware, witch hat knobs. I mean, they made a blonde version too, but it's essentially the same guitar, different color. That is the guitar that we are looking at. Another thing that I would like to mention, just on the tip of my tongue here, I forgot, losing my train of thought here. Had something very important to mention. I forgot. It'll come back to me. So it's got that really nice binding on it, which people loved about these guitars. I don't know if it's the same thickness as a Les Paul, but it's roughly the same thickness, I would imagine. It's got these really nice witch hat knobs, which are all present and all original. The hardware that for the pickguard is still present, and I've looked closely at that picture on the website. That is the exact hardware that's used. It's got the binding all along the neck here. The fretwork looks pretty good. Like the frets are, I think these have been recrowned at some point. They're pretty flat. So yeah, they're pretty flat. It's kind of grungy, a little crusty. Here's the Gibson headstock. Now the interesting, I know what I was going to say. The interesting thing about this lawsuit era of guitars was there wasn't actually a lot of lawsuits filed against Ibenez, but there was one, and that was in particular, Gibson was particularly upset about this exact guitar, the open book style headstock here. That is something that Gibson, that is a symbol of Gibson's brand, and they protect that very, very vigorously. No one's allowed to make a guitar with that open book style headstock. That's Gibson's thing. That's a Gibson thing. And yeah, so there was a lawsuit filed against Ibenez for producing these guitars, and it was settled out of court, and then these guitars were no longer made. So the other thing that's interesting about this, because these guitars were starting to eat into Gibson and Fender's profits, Gibson and Fender decided to make a counter move in the market, and they came up with something called Fender Squier and Epiphone guitars. And that is precisely where the brands Epiphone and Squier came from. It was Fender and Gibson's response to this flooding of the market of economy guitars. So essentially, this guitar here is the precise reason why we have Epiphone and Squier guitars. This is the one. This is the thing that started that whole, Gibson's movement to start an economy brand of their guitars. I think that's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool piece of guitar history here. This guitar represents a turning point in the history of guitar sales and manufacturing. So I think that that is something pretty cool. I like that. So I'm going to keep this guitar. I'm actually going to fix it up. The tuners on this thing are crap. Like I said, I've never plugged it in. I'm going to put new strings on it. I'm going to intonate it and plug it in and see what we got. I don't think we have anything great here. But something that's sort of interesting is that the saddle has these plastic kind of saddle pieces, or I should say the bridge has these plastic saddle pieces. I'm not sure if they're actually plastic or bone or what they are. I've never seen that before. We'll get some fresh strings on this thing. Turn it over. Let's have a look at the back here. It is in pretty good shape for this age. It's got, you know, some usual scuffs back here, some belt rash back here. It is a bolt-on neck. And we're going to get into the compartments here and check things out. Maybe there's a serial number in there. I'm not sure. I'll put some tuner control lubricant in the pots. Put some new strings on this thing, and we'll see what we got. It's super interesting. And let's see what this thing sounds like. I'm not expecting a lot. However, Ibenez went on in the mid-70s, and the quality of these lawsuit era guitars really got really improved quite drastically. And that's where we get brands like Tokai and Takamine actually is another company that came out of this lawsuit era. And Ibenez as well, we know today, the Ibenez big guitar manufacturer that we know today came out of this era when they started making higher quality instruments. So a lot of the mid-70s era, lawsuit era Ibenez guitars are actually very highly sought after, and were actually very, very nice instruments. If you can find yourself a Tokai, a Strat copy from the late 70s, that is a good guitar. And some of these guitars that were eventually made out of this era were really, really competitive adversaries of the actual real thing. And a lot of people to this day think that the copies that were being made at that time in Japan of especially Fender style guitars were actually better than the actual Fender guitars that were being made at that time. Yes, these original guitars were very cheap, sort of a budget option, but eventually these guitars drastically improved in quality, and some of these models are really, really actually very good guitars and highly sought after these days. So I just wanted to add that. It might be a little hard to intonate this on closer inspection. These are indeed plastic, very much plastic, and I hope they're not stripped. That's my concern right now. Curiously, you see these tuners are actually stamped Japan. Really do not feel very good though. They're really loose, but I suppose we'll keep these on here just to keep the guitar original. Maybe if it's a player we'll put some time into it. So 500K pots. Wiring looks good. Nichion. Alright, I've finished fixing up the Camero Les Paul here. So, looks good. Fretboard's all cleaned up. Frets are polished. Put some oil up the fretboard. New strings. Tighten the neck up. Tighten the tuners up. Put some... I intonated it, and I figured out pretty quickly why these are all backwards, because this bridge is sort of not in an ideal position for intonation. So for instance, this E, yeah, anyways. So intonated it and put some pot cleaner in the pots. So a couple observations while tuning it up. These the saddle, the bridge, and the tailpiece here is just absolute trash metal. The finish is kind of nice. It looks like a well, it's not a polyester finish like the newer cheap guitars. It's probably an I'm not sure what it is, but anyways, it's looking good. Let's go plug it in, see what it sounds like. Camero. Camero. Ibenez. That's the Camero Lawsuit Les Paul copy. Lawsuit guitars, now you know what they are. Now you know what they look like. And I hope you enjoyed that video. Not sure what I'm going to do with this guitar. Completely unsure. It's hard to play. It's not a quick player. It's the frets are really worn out on it, so it's not a... It's a little hard to play. The pickup selector switch is a little messed up too, so that needs to be looked at. But anyhow, I just thought that would be an interesting video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time on the U Auto Scotty YouTube channel. Bye for now.